My name is Cheever Meaders. I was born in 1887, the 22nd day of January, up there in that house, right up there, old house place. And pretty good fellow yet. I think there's a whole lot of work left in my hide yet. I'm feeling better.
Well, I reckon my grandfather started it. He helped do it anyhow. I think some of my dad's older brothers was the one that actually started it. And he took it up. He was just 4 or 5 years old when they started it. And then he just grew into it. And I reckon I done the same thing. My first memories were of this place here. Watching my dad, I guess I was just still crawling around on all fours. I used to get up on this wheel, get on this top wheel, this head block we call it. My older brother would spin me around on it. He'd turn the wheel and I'd sit up on it. Look kind of foolish now looking back to things like that. In any direction that we want to go within 2 miles of this place, we get most any kind of clay we're looking for. You'll usually find 3 or 4 different kinds of clay in one clay pond. Of course, we have to dig it in the fall of the year when the water in the ground is at a low tide. There's no clay that I ever found that would work by itself that come from a pond. You've got to go to 2 or 3 more anyhow and get the clay from them and mix it all together so it'll work good. I have 5 different kinds right there. 3 of them is a yellow, 4 of them is a yellow clay, and the other one is a blue clay. Mix 2 of them together, you still can't use it. Mix the other 3 with it, then it makes a good turning clay. You can go on with it. Well, we call it a clay mill. It's for mixing the clay, or we call it grinding the clay. You see the way these pegs are put in, this staff going up and down, the way they're trimmed. They're flat on the bottom and kind of rounded off toward the top on the front side, and that gives the clay an uplifting motion as the mule pulls this thing around. And as it comes up, it leaves a hole behind that peg, and the clay just rolls back in and just keeps it mixed up real good. It takes about 1.5 hours to 2 hours to grind a mill in this with a mule, and that's enough to last about 1.5 days for one man if he wants to work at it. If he don't, he can make it last a week longer.
Come on, we'll keep going. Get some grass in a minute, come on. Come on, boy. Getting tired? You ain't done nothing in a week. Looks like you wasn't tired out too quick. I'm used to grinding with a mule there. I've never done nothing else. I just like it. It ain't as fast as grinding with a machine, but I don't care anything about hurrying anymore. I'm gonna take my time from here out.
And I reckon this is the only place like this in the whole United States. Everything is going modern, using machinery. Now, where else would you find an old mill to use a mule to it? And where else would you find a mule? Well, there's no reason to change it. I wanted to make a barn out of it one time, but I got talked out of it no sooner than I mentioned it. Never did mention it again.
It takes about 10 pounds to make a gallon piece. For a 1 gallon jug, a pitcher. I'd make a half gallon size. This weight here, that's for a 4 gallon size. That's a pretty good churn. And they generally use them for milk, churning, old time churning with a churn stick. And then they use that 4 gallon size for pickling beans and kraut, beet pickles and the like of that. And then we get down here to this 5 gallon size. That 5 gallon size is made for the same thing. You take 2 5 gallon churns and fill it up full of pickled beans, you got 10 gallons. And that there does a family almost through the winter. It wasn't me though.
What is that for, Mr. Meaders?
That's the gauge. It's to give them the thickness of the bottom. If the bottom is too thin or too thick, they will crack and dry and then firing. That's one thing we've got to watch, is the thickness of the bottoms. Used to make pottery this way, and then they would gauge the bottom. And they lost all kinds of pottery in drying. If left it too thick, be too heavy, and likely to crack. Cracks come in it, go plumb through it. This clay works good. It's good clay. And every pull I make across it gets it thinner. I always like to make them thin enough. If they're too thick, when you go to fire them, well, you don't have to run the fire as fast. You got to run the fire slower. If they don't, they fleet. Pieces will blow out of them. And it's finished up. I'm ready for cutting them loose. This is my measuring stick. This gives me the height of the pottery. This here first mark here, 12 inches, is about the height. We run a 1 gallon piece. Well, then we move up here a little further, 2 inches, to a 2 gallon piece. Now, if I can pull it up to that and a little bit more and spread it out, it's always whole lot of marked. No, I've got no gauge for making the width of them wide, but I made so many I can just tell.
What we're doing now is wedging the clay, getting the hard places out of it, knocking the air out of it. The main thing about turning a churn or any kind of a pot is learning how to center the clay on the wheel. Unless that is done to start with, well, you might as well not try it. We'll make the top on this first and cut it off and set it aside and use it later. It's just a habit that I got into just watching my dad about 40 years ago. His left arm was crippled, you know, and the elbow had been broke. And he couldn't bend it, and he couldn't reach the bottom of the churn it in that shape. But mine's not broke, and it's long enough to reach the bottom, but I just got in the habit of doing it. And I don't see any reason to change it now. This rig makes the bottom and opens the ball out at the same time. Ball opener, I guess you'd call it. It would seem appropriate. Now that's the bottom, which is about a 1/2 inch thick right now. But when that's cut loose from that block, it'll be about 5/16. Well, you have to have a lot of determination to get in to start. It's discouraging when you first start. A lot of people's going to be disillusioned that's trying to learn it. I guess it would take about 15 years for a person to get to where they could really learn it, really work at it. Of course, a man just starting out to try to make a living at it, he'll starve to death. And if he owes anything or in debt, he'll lose everything he's got. But if he worked with somebody else that knows what they're doing for about 5 or 6 years and then try it on his own, he'll usually make a success of it.
Well, I make my churns in 2 pieces. That's a very common thing with potters. They do that in order to get the top heavy enough for the churn to stand, keep it from warping about and drying. My brother Wiley Brown's worked down here for Uncle Bill. Just about all of them done that. I wouldn't make a big churn without it. I don't know what's going to happen to the pottery entrance through here. There's nobody will learn them. They know these young boys learn to talk. And there's some of them did learn, but they won't work at it. They're too much of something else from the seed. It's, you get that wheel and go to making, you got to be there at that wheel. You can't get out here and look at the world a passing by. I've got one boy, he was up here the other day, he can make right real pretty stuff. Make pretty pieces, but they're small. I don't know, some people can learn and some can't. I've seen boys come in here and me, and do everything they could to learn, and more they do, the less they know.
Well, I've got some things here that are called lifters. These things have been used. I know I'm the 3rd generation that's using these same lifters. Clay has to be somewhat softer to make a handle than it does for a churn. We'll have to stretch it out like stretching rubber.
I'd make right up around 100, right around 75 and 100 gallons a day in big churns. Now, I don't believe I ever made 2 pieces alike. There'd be a little difference in them. But I put my handles on alike and the lifters on a churn. That's how I can sell a piece of my pottery if I see it in New York. Just pass by and see it, I'd tell it. Except in a flower pot. They're made every way, you know. No certain shape for a flower pot, something hold a little dirt in the bottom of the hole and a flower set in it.
Well, you're trying to preserve the old things that has been and things that are going out. When I go, this place will go with me because there'll be nobody else left to carry it on. And without it, what they get here, they can't get anywhere else.
Yes, sir. That's the first thing was ever used here for glaze. Take 3 measures of ashes and 1 of the settlings, mix it together.
These settlings are in a small place here. I think there used to be an old mill pond here, and this is a silt that settled into it. It has all kinds of minerals in it. It come off of these old hills around here. It's mostly red clay is what it is.
We use some clay in the glaze, but now that clay won't melt by itself. Always use wood ashes, something like that. Well, I had to be sure and get pure ashes. Didn't, why, I had nothing to melt. Sat there tin oxide in the ashes that melts. Well, if you use ashes that won't melt, you've got no glaze at all.
Well, the first thing we do is sift the ashes out. Get the nails and the rock, one thing and another out of it. Then we go get the settling, use churns to measure it in. Use 4 or 5 gallon churns with ashes and use 2 of the settlings. Mix them up and strain them out, get the rocks and the roots and one thing and another out of them. And then powder the glass. We use an iron rod and a metal container. We just pour it in it. The old fruit jars and broke window lights, or just anything that was glass.
Old Uncle Billy Pittsford, he used to use that glass powdered up. And there were several of them use it, but the glass was scarce. They'd pick up every little piece they could find anywhere. You didn't get much glass back then. And as time come along, it got where I could use it. I expect it was about 1908. Why, it's pretty plentiful around.
We put it all together and mix it up, and then run it through the rock. We use a glazing mill. It's something similar to a mill rock. This is the only one that I know of that's in existence anywhere. Well, that was just a cross, just an iron cross. Underneath the top rock, it's chiseled out for that cross to fit up in it. The bottom rock has a hole down through the middle with an iron shaft coming up, and the top rock is right down on top of that. The way you adjust the weight of that rock is you lift this up just a little or let it down, or whichever way it needs to go. There's a hole down through the middle of that top stone to let that stuff go down through it and get under that rock. Of course, it's all done by hand. Sometimes a person don't want to do things, and this is one of them. Because a pottery like this, the way it's done, old way, it's not a thing in the world. Just man-killing work from start to finish. The best glazes goes on the churns. The churns are used for processing food. And if you've got an inferior glaze on them and start pickling the beef in the churn and your vinegar starts dripping out, it ain't long, you've got a rotten can of beef. The best we ever use is that ash glazing. When you put it on a churn and fire it, it'll move just a little when it's melted. It'll run on the churn. But commercial glaze, it just melts and that's it. It don't ever move.
At one time, there used to be 9 pottery shops here in White County, and all of them was in operation. and they sold everything they could make. Used to put up a lot of beans through the picklum, crowd, milk, vegetables, all kinds. They had to put in this pottery ware, because there wasn't much or nothing else to put anything in, you know. So all the pottery they could make.
But that kiln there is about had it. I know the shape that it's in. I know what it's built of. But for some reason, a kiln never burns good until it's just ready to fall in. The front of it there can be bricked up at most any time. It can even be bricked up before the fire's even started in it. The only thing about it is to have enough draft in the front of the kiln to keep the fire going good. After you get the fire started, it takes about 10 to 12 hours to temper this clay out. That's to keep it from busting and cracking when it gets too hot. The clay has minerals such as sulfur and salt that has to be cured out. You have to judge from the clay that you've been using and the glaze that you've been using. Then you just keep building up the fire, you know, to a crescendo. And when you reach the peak on it, well, what you're really looking for then, looking at the top of the chimney, when the blaze begins to feather, it begins to sprinkle out, more or less like a branch on a tree. And it begins to turn rather white in place of red. Well, when it begins to do that, it's time then to think about looking on the inside of the furnace and see what's happening. Because it's just about the time then for you to quit. I could no more stop this than I could fly an airplane. All of my movement, all my work that I've done all my life has led straight to this place right here. And every time I come about it, it's just a little bit deeper into it. And they're up so deep in it now, they can't get away from it.
Well, I would farm a little, you know. Not so much, but I see that pottery work. Enjoy farming it, glazing it. Because I can make any piece of any size I want to, and any shape I want to. If I wanted to make a jug, I'd make one. If I wanted to make a pitcher, I'd make it. Flower pot, bowl, just anything of the kind. And then all them shapes that a potter puts out is in his head. Every one of them. Yes, and I enjoy working in that clay. And this handmade pottery, you're going to be gone after a while. You take it plumb out of existence, nobody to make it. And in 10 years, people will be wondering how that is made. How does it make that? How's that piece of pottery made? I just don't see how it's done. That song was in the Windows of Heaven songbook. I used to have to sing it too.